I'm Julie, and this is a series of general biology videos on photosynthesis. Okay, so let's go. What is photosynthesis? So most of life gets its energy from the sun. Plants can transform that energy from the sun using photosynthesis and making glucose. And our formula for glucose is C6H12O6, and also giving off oxygen. Then plants and animals can use the energy, the potential chemical energy stored in glucose in a process called cellular respiration to make ATP. ATP has the energy, can store the energy short term to be able to do work. And cellular respiration gives off the products water and carbon dioxide. Dioxide and water. So this is the chemical reaction right here for cellular respiration. Glucose plus oxygen gives you carbon dioxide, water, and ATP. And this is the chemical reaction for photosynthesis. Water, carbon dioxide, plus energy from the sun gives you glucose and oxygen. Okay, so let's look at cellular respiration. So we talked about cellular respiration, and in glucose, there's energy stored in there. There were high energy electrons in our glucose molecule. These are the stars of the show. So our stars are here inside the glucose molecule, and they get transferred to this molecule right here, NADH. So the stars of the show are high energy electron molecules, get transferred to NADH. We get a little bit of ATP in the process. And remember, those high energy electrons get carried in a high energy electron carrier. So NAD, and here they are. Here's the stars of our show right there. They get taxied or carried to the electron transport chain in electron transport carrier, high energy electron carrier. The citric acid cycle also produces NADH, and again, the stars of the show get transferred into these high energy electron carriers. And they go to the electron transport chain. And here they are again. Here's the stars of the show. And in this electron transport chain, they set up a concentration gradient. And that concentration gradient of hydrogen ions is potential energy. And then that flow of hydrogens through our ATP synthase forms ATP. And we calculated about 34 ATP molecules. So that's a lot of energy. So what we want to know now is where did these high energy electrons come from? The stars of the show. We need to do a little bit of a backstory, figure out where they came from. Okay, they come from photosynthesis. So photosynthesis, energy from the sun with carbon dioxide and water forms sugar, and oxygen is given off. Let's look at this in more detail. So who does photosynthesis? Plants do photosynthesis, algae, and cyanobacteria. So bacteria also does photosynthesis. Okay. So cyanobacteria is a prokaryote, single-celled critter, single-celled organism. They do photosynthesis, and also plants and algae, eukaryotes, do photosynthesis. So here's our plant, and these are the cells inside the plant. Only some cells have a high number of chloroplasts. That's where photosynthesis happens. And it's these chloroplasts, and you can see in this Elodea cell right here, here's a cell, you can see the cell wall, and you can see all of these green chloroplasts in here. That's where photosynthesis is happening. So here's our plant cell right here, and you can see a little chloroplast, and then magnify that, and inside our chloroplast there are structures called thylakoids. So this is a thylakoid, and a chloroplast has a double membrane. We have an outer membrane and an inner membrane, and you can see that in this picture really well right here. There's an outer membrane and an inner membrane. And these thylakoids get stacked up into what looks like a stack of pancakes, and that is called a granum. And out here, outside of the chloroplast, is the cytoplasm of the cell. And here we are inside a chloroplast, and the space inside the chloroplast is called the stroma. Okay, so photosynthesis is happening in each of these thylakoids in a eukaryote. In a prokaryote, remember prokaryotes don't have organelles, but they do have thylakoids. And these structures right here that are just inside of the cell membrane are thylakoids. So they can also do photosynthesis. Okay, so in photosynthesis, energy is coming from the sun. So how can plants harness that energy? Well, let's take a closer look at what energy is. So let me make sure. Before we move on from this slide, I've got everything. So we have chloroplast, thylakoids, a granum, stroma, inner membrane, outer membrane. Sometimes the membrane around the thylakoid, that's also considered a third membrane. Okay, so let's look at energy. Okay, what is energy? Energy from the sun is sometimes thought of as in a wave form, but also particle. So it's a wave and a particle. So right here, you can see that the light from the sun has many different wavelengths. Here, let's take a look at a wave, just some vocabulary on a wave. So from one crest to another crest is called a wavelength. And here's the trough, and here's the crest. So wavelength. So let's go back to our picture. So a longer wavelength, so crest to crest, has lower energy. And a smaller wavelength from crest to crest has higher energy. So there's energy in here. And plants can use the energy in the visible range. And it's easy for me to remember the colors of the spectrum. If I remember Roy G. Biv. So red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Actually, let me back up one. So an analogy, if you think about it, so from crest to crest, these are low energy and then high energy on this side. If you take a rope and you try to make waves with the rope, it's pretty easy. It really doesn't take a whole lot of energy to make waves in a rope with a high wavelength. But it takes a lot of energy to make waves in a rope with a very short wavelength. So that's a good analogy. So in plants have a chemicals called pigments. And these pigments can absorb that energy in the visible spectrum. So there's a certain pigment called a chlorophyll A. Make sure I get this spelled right. Two L's. Chlorophyll A. And chlorophyll A absorbs the colors in the spectrum, red and blue. So what does that mean? So they are absorbing the energy in this range right here. So all of this light, of course, is hitting the plant, but it's only absorbing the energy and the wavelengths in this range right here. The energy in this range right here bounces off. And that's why we see green in plants, is because this color is being reflected while these colors are being absorbed. Okay, so now we know a little bit more about energy. Next video, we're going to talk more about the specifics of photosynthesis. Okay, so I hope you found that interesting.